I was the niece of a fallen soldier. The government had called him a war hero. The villagers called him a martyr. To me, Uncle Robert had simply been the man who raised me after my parents died, the one who tucked me in at night with rough, calloused hands and told me not to be afraid of the dark. When the telegram came saying he'd sacrificed himself in the flood rescue, my world collapsed. I was 17, an orphan, and all I had left was his name, his medal, and a small wooden house at the edge of the village. The elders pitied me. They said things like, "Poor Emily, she's a martyr's niece now. She'll be looked after." But pity didn't put food on the table. Pity didn't keep the cold from seeping through the cracks in the walls. And pity didn't change the fact that I had fallen in love with Ryan Hayes. Ryan wasn't like the boys in the village. He was from the city, taller, fairer, with clean fingernails and a confident way of talking, as though he were destined for something greater. He wore his shirts tucked in, his hair neatly combed. When he smiled, the other girls giggled behind their hands. I wasn't like them. I wasn't giggling material. My clothes were patched in too many places and I worked the fields until my hands cracked and bled. But my heart, foolish as it was, believed that if I gave him everything I had, if I humbled myself enough, maybe he would see me. So I saved the best portions of my rations, half a steamed bun here, a spoonful of rice there. I went to bed hungry some nights, convincing myself it didn't matter. Uncle would want me to share, I whispered to the shadows. And when I handed those rations to Ryan, pretending it was nothing, he barely looked at me. "Thanks," he'd say casually as though I were a servant. Then he'd walk away with Sophie Miller at his side. Sophie. The darling of the educated youth who came from the city with Ryan. She was delicate, her skin pale from books instead of farm work, her voice soft enough to make even scolding sound like a song. She looked at Ryan like he hung the moon and he looked at her the same way. I tried not to mind. I told myself if I just work harder, if I just prove myself useful, one day he'll notice me instead of her. "Emily, don't overdo it," my neighbor Mrs. Jensen scolded one evening as I carried water buckets nearly too heavy for me. "You're wasting your strength on that Hayes boy. He's got city dust in his veins. He'll never stay in a place like this." But I smiled like a fool and said, "It's okay. I don't mind. As long as he's happy." Even then, part of me knew she was right. But I buried that thought deep because the alternative, that all my effort, all my devotion was for nothing, was unbearable. It wasn't until the village chief called a meeting that Ryan's eyes truly landed on me. We gathered in the threshing yard, the loudspeaker crackling as Chief Whitaker cleared his throat. "There's been a new government notice," he announced, voice echoing. "The families of martyrs are to receive special consideration. Any young man who marries the orphan niece of a fallen soldier," his eyes swept the crowd until they settled on me, "will qualify for a quota to return to the city." Gasps rose from the villagers. I felt my face burn as everyone turned to stare. Ryan's head snapped toward me. For the first time he looked at me not like a bothersome fly buzzing around him, but like I was something useful. That night as I walked home he appeared out of the shadows. Sophie wasn't with him. His smile was smooth, practiced, almost tender. "Emily," he said softly, "I've been thinking, you've always been good to me. Maybe it's time I stopped taking that for granted." I froze, the water pail slipping in my hand. For months, years I had prayed for this, and yet hearing it out loud I should have known better. I should have questioned why. But my heart, starved for affection, swelled until tears blurred my vision. "You mean it?" I whispered. He reached out, brushing his thumb against my cheek like a promise. "Of course. Marry me, Emily. We'll go back to the city together." The next morning the chief announced our engagement. At first I thought it was a dream come true. Ryan was my husband. My husband. I repeated it over and over, tasting the words like sugar on my tongue. I woke early to cook for him, worked his share of the fields, washed his clothes, even ironed the creases in his shirts until my fingers blistered. "Emily, don't do too much," Sophie said one afternoon, feigning concern as she lounged in the shade. "Ryan doesn't like girls who act desperate." I laughed it off even as my knees trembled from carrying another load of wheat. "It's fine. I don't mind helping." But Ryan did nothing to stop her words. In fact, he smirked, patting Sophie's hand like they shared a private joke. The first time he belittled me openly we were with his friends, the other educated youths. Someone asked if I'd ever been to the city. Ryan chuckled and said, "Emily? She's just a village girl. she'd get lost before she even made it to the bus stop. They all laughed. I laughed too, pretending it was funny, though my cheeks burned with shame. Day by day the cracks widened. He stopped calling me his wife. Instead he sneered, "Don't forget, Emily, I didn't marry you. I married your quota." And still I endured. I thought, if I just hold on, if I just wait, maybe he'll change. Maybe he'll remember I gave him everything. But people have a way of crushing the ones who let themselves be crushed. It started with whispers in the village. "Did you hear? Emily was seen alone with Caleb Turner. A married woman walking with another man? Shameful." I didn't know where it came from, but it spread like wildfire. And when I confronted Ryan, trembling, he didn't defend me. Instead he leaned close, his smile cruel. "Maybe it's true. Maybe you are shameless. But this works out perfectly for me, doesn't it?" That night Mrs. Turner stormed into our yard, dragging her simple-minded son by the hand. "Emily Carter. How dare you seduce my boy? You've ruined our family's name." I begged them to believe me, but the villagers pointed, whispering, laughing. Even Sophie stood at Ryan's side, her expression the picture of pity. Ryan folded his arms. "Emily, if you wanted freedom, you should have just said so. No need to disgrace me." Something inside me cracked that night. The shame, the whispers, the betrayal from the man I had sacrificed everything for. It was too much. I stumbled back to my little house, grabbed the bottle of pesticide from under the sink and swallowed. The pain was fire ripping through my chest and throat. My vision blurred and I collapsed onto the dirt floor. The last thing I remembered was Ryan's voice, cold and distant. "You were never good enough for me anyway." But when I opened my eyes, I was 17 again. The day before the engagement. The day the chief would ask me who I wanted to marry. This time my heart was no longer foolish. This time I wouldn't crawl at Ryan Hayes's feet. This time I would choose differently. When I woke, the first thing I heard was the sound of roosters crowing. For a moment I thought it was some fevered dream before death, that endless cycle of noise from my childhood farm looping in my dying ears. But when I sat up, clutching my chest, I realized something was wrong. The walls were smooth, not peeling from years of damp. The quilt covering me wasn't patched with a dozen scraps. My body wasn't racked with poison. I was alive. And not just alive, I was young. My hands weren't scarred from years of field work. My nails weren't ragged and yellowed from scrubbing. I scrambled to the mirror and nearly collapsed. My reflection was the 17-year-old version of me. The same girl who had once believed Ryan Hayes was the son. Tears stung my eyes. My heart raced. I was back. Back before the engagement. Back before the gossip, the shame, the poison. Second chance. This time I whispered to myself, I won't waste it. That afternoon the chief's messenger came. "Emily Carter, the chief is asking for you," he said gruffly. "It's time to decide your marriage." Marriage. The word still made me shudder. I remembered vividly the moment I'd once been cornered into Ryan's arms, thinking it was love. I remembered Sophie's mocking gaze, Ryan's contempt, the way he spat out, "I didn't marry you, I married your quota." But now I would change it all. I followed the messenger to Chief Whitaker's house, each step steady, each breath reminding me, "Don't be afraid. You've already died once. Nothing they can do will hurt you again." The chief sat cross-legged at his desk, pipe smoke curling lazily into the air. He peered at me over his glasses. "Emily," he said slowly, "you're of age. With your uncle gone, it's time we arranged your future. You understand?" "Yes, Chief." My voice was calm, clear. He studied me for a long moment. "In this village, many young men admire you. But it's your choice. Tell me, who do you want to marry?" The first time I lived this day, I stammered, blushed, hesitated until Ryan's name slipped out like a confession. That choice had killed me. This time I lifted my chin. "Daniel Brooks." The chief blinked. "Daniel." His brows furrowed. "You're certain?" "Yes." My answer was firm. "He's the one I choose." Daniel Brooks was another educated youth from the city, but unlike Ryan, he carried no arrogance. He came from a disgraced family. His parents had once been professors, but after political purges they were labeled reactionaries and sent to labor reform. The stigma clung to him like dirt no one could wash off. Because of that, people mocked him, excluded him. But I remembered the day he had carried me on his back, my body writhing in agony from poison, everyone else too afraid to help. He hadn't cared about my ruined reputation. He had only whispered stories to distract me from the pain, his tears hot on the back of my neck as he ran. How could I not choose him? I had barely stepped out of the chief's house when a familiar voice cut through the air like a knife. Emily. Ryan. He strode toward me, Sophie trailing delicately behind, her hand looped through his arm as though she belonged there. His eyes were hard, his lips curled in scorn. Did I say you could make that kind of decision? His voice was sharp enough for the bystanders to hear. A few villagers paused, curious. I stopped, facing him head-on. What decision? You told the chief you wanted to marry Daniel Brooks, he spat. Don't you understand how ridiculous you sound? Do you even know what dignity is? Even a country girl should have some self-respect. My blood boiled, but I held my ground. I never said I wanted to marry you, Ryan. Not this time. Not ever again. For a heartbeat, his expression faltered. He wasn't used to me speaking back. He recovered quickly, his laugh bitter. When Sophie went in just now, I heard everything through the window. The chief asked who you liked, and now you're still lying. You think I could ever like a woman full of lies? I turned my gaze deliberately on Sophie, who stood at his side with that practiced innocence. Did you not hear the rest of what I said? Sophie blinked, her lips parting, but no words came. Instead she lowered her eyes, playing the meek victim. Ryan sneered, protecting her. You really think someone as refined as Sophie would stand there listening to nonsense? Don't drag her into your delusions. Sophie tugged gently at his sleeve, whispering sweetly, Ryan, don't blame Emily. You're so outstanding, of course she'd want to marry you. Her words sliced deeper than any blade, but I refused to let them see me bleed. In my past life I had bowed my head, swallowing every humiliation, desperate for crumbs of affection. Not this time. I stood straighter, letting my voice carry so the gathering villagers would hear. I never wanted to marry you, Ryan Hayes. And I never will. The air crackled with shock. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Ryan's jaw tightened, his nostrils flaring. For once, the great Ryan Hayes had no ready retort. His pride, the thing he cherished most, had been struck in front of everyone. Behind him, Sophie's smile slipped, her eyes darting nervously. Me. For the first time in my life I felt free. That night as I lay beneath the quilt, I whispered to the darkness, Uncle, I won't shame your memory again. I won't let them trample me. And deep in my heart I felt it. This life would not repeat the last. This time I would write my own fate. The sun was hot that afternoon, beating down on the fields until the air shimmered. I had just left the chief's house, my steps lighter than they had been in years, when Ryan blocked my way. Sophie trailed beside him, holding a straw hat to shield her pale face from the sun, her lips curving in that delicate smile that always made the villagers sigh. What a refined girl. Ryan didn't waste time. His eyes, dark with impatience, flicked toward the fields. The wheat in Sophie's plot hasn't been harvested yet, he said flatly. Go help her cut it. Sophie immediately put on her soft act. It's okay, Ryan, I can do it myself. But he looked at her with tenderness, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. No way. Your hands are meant for reading and writing, not holding a sickle. Let Emily do it. In my past life I would have agreed instantly. I would have smiled, swallowed the humiliation, and gone into the fields like a loyal mule. I had thought my labor meant I was needed, that if I gave enough, Ryan would one day love me. This time I looked at my calloused hands, the lines etched deep into my palms from years of hard work, and smiled faintly. Sure, I said, my voice calm. Ryan's smirk widened until I added, but once it's done, whose work points will it count toward? Let's make that clear in advance. His expression darkened, the smugness slipping away. I just asked you for a favor and you're already eyeing Sophie's work points? Emily, you're really petty. I straightened, my tone cool. Petty? I've done years of work for you and Sophie, and what did I get in return? Nothing but insults. If you want me to respect you even slightly, then stop treating me like free labor. Gasps came from the villagers working nearby. They weren't used to me talking back to Ryan Hayes. Ryan's face turned red with anger. If you want me to respect you, stop acting like a small-minded country girl. What's wrong with helping Sophie? My patience snapped. What's wrong with being from the countryside? I shot back, voice ringing clear across the field. It's our farmland that feeds you city people. What makes you think you're so superior? You're not better than anyone else. He stiffened and used to such defiance. His lips curled into a sneer, but before he could speak I added, firm and cold. And let me be clear, I never wanted to marry you. Not then. Not now. Not ever. For a moment silence fell. Even Sophie's gentle smile faltered. Then Ryan barked a laugh, trying to recover his pride. Wow, Emily. Playing hard to get now? Do you even have what it takes? It's pathetic, like a cheap imitation trying to copy a noble act. He raised his voice, making sure everyone could hear. You'd better finish harvesting Sophie's wheat before nightfall. If you don't expect me to speak to you again. Sophie tugged at his arm sweetly. Ryan, don't be mad. I heard the neighboring village is showing a movie tonight. Let's go watch it. They left together, not even glancing back. I stood rooted to the spot, fury simmering in my chest. In my old life I would have done the work anyway, because I couldn't stand the thought of waste, because I thought being useful to him meant something. This time I clenched my fist. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. But as I neared my own home I stopped short. A swarm of ants covered the ground, moving in a frenzy. My stomach sank. It was a sign a storm was coming. If Sophie's wheat wasn't harvested tonight, it would rot in the rain. I closed my eyes, sighed, then turned back toward the village chief's house. The chief listened patiently as I explained. When I finished, he stroked his beard with a sigh. Sophie always drags her feet. I was already thinking of assigning someone else to finish it. Go ahead and cut the wheat. I'll make sure the work points are counted under your name. Relief flooded me. Thank you, Chief. As I turned to leave, he called after me. Emily. I paused. He looked at me with narrowed eyes. Didn't you used to like Ryan Hayes? Why Daniel Brooks now? I smiled faintly. Because Daniel's a good man. I don't care about his background. I care that he's kind. He reads, he tells stories. That's enough for me. The chief shook his head with a chuckle. That boy's lucky, I'll say that much. By the time I reached Sophie's plot, the other fields had all been cleared. Her wheat stood tall and uncut, a glaring patch against the horizon. I picked up a sickle and began to work, bundling stalk after stalk. Sweat dripped down my neck, my back aching, but my thoughts wandered to Daniel Brooks. In my past life, as I lay dying from poison, it had been him who carried me. He had told me stories the whole way, his voice breaking with emotion. The last thing I remembered before slipping into darkness was his choked whisper. Emily, you're the Weaver girl. You came down to suffer, but I'm no coward. I'll find you again. That memory gave me strength. I cut faster, sharper, until the wheat was bundled neatly. But just as I straightened to stretch, mocking voices drifted from behind. Well, isn't this Emily again? Back to doing Sophie's work. I turned to see a group of educated youths, Ryan's city friends, smirking. If you want to please Ryan, you'd better start with Sophie first, one jeered. Ryan and Sophie were sweethearts long before they came here, another added with a laugh. Emily's just handing herself a green hat. Pathetic. Anger surged hot in my veins. In the past I would have laughed nervously, pretended not to hear, desperate to keep Ryan's friends happy. This time I gripped the sickle and marched straight toward them, my expression hard. What did you just say? My voice was low but sharp enough to cut glass. The ringleader faltered, paling slightly but forced a smirk. Why? Did we say something wrong? If you don't know how to act with dignity, don't blame others for pointing it out. I raised the sickle, pointing it at his chest. In our village, people who gossip like that get a beating. Gasps rippled through the group. The boy stumbled back, eyes wide. Before the moment could stretch further, someone shouted, Ryan's coming. I turned to see him and Sophie approaching. As always, when they neared the village, they let go of each other's hands, pretending innocence. Ryan's gaze swept over the harvested wheat, then landed on me. A smug smile spread across his face. Not bad. Since you've admitted your faults and shown some humility, I'll allow you to attend Sophie's birthday party tomorrow. The words hit me like ice water. In my past life, I had attended every one of Sophie's parties, invited not as a guest but as free labor. I brought rice, flour, vegetables, eggs. I cooked, cleaned, served, believing I was part of Ryan's circle. Believing that being near him was enough. Now I knew better. I looked him square in the eye. No thanks. I'm not interested in your birthdays. His smile froze. The color drained from his face, replaced by a dark flush of fury. You, he stormed toward me, his voice dripping with contempt. I give you a little compliment and now you think you're hot stuff? Emily Carter, I'm doing you a favor letting you show up. Who do you think you are? I drew in a steady breath. Let me make it clear one more time, Ryan. I don't like you. I never did. And I never will. The villagers around us stared wide-eyed. For once, Ryan Hayes, the proud city youth, had been humiliated in public. And as he stood there trembling with rage, I turned and walked away, my back straight, my dignity intact. That night, Chief Whitaker called me to his house again. This time Daniel Brooks was there, sitting stiffly on the wooden bench, his face red with nerves. The chief chuckled. Turns out this boy's had his eyes on you for a while. As soon as I brought it up, he lit up like a lantern. Sang me half an opera too. Daniel covered his face, embarrassed. Our eyes met briefly, and for the first time I saw it, the warmth, the sincerity. My heart softened. Chief Whitaker's voice grew stern. If both of you agree, I'll witness it. Consider yourselves engaged. Daniel nodded firmly, his voice steady. I agree. I looked at him, then at the chief, and nodded too. So do I. And just like that, my new future began. The loudspeaker crackled to life just after dinner, its shrill voice cutting through the hum of crickets and the clatter of dishes. All villagers gather at the threshing yard immediately. At least one person from every household must attend. Important announcement to follow. I wiped my hands on my apron, heart pounding. Something about the urgency made me uneasy. From the corner of the room, Aunt Jensen called, "Emily, you'd better go. This sounds big." I hurried down the dirt road, the path already crowded with neighbors. Some carried lanterns, their flickering light casting long shadows. The whole village buzzed with anticipation. When we reached the threshing yard, Chief Whitaker stood on a large rock, his pipe clenched between his teeth, his face solemn. The chatter died down. Only the crackle of the loudspeaker remained. "Everyone," he began, voice steady but tinged with emotion, "you all know that 3 years ago, during the floods, Emily Carter's parents sacrificed their lives to save others. They were recognized as martyrs by the state. We have honored their memory ever since." At his words, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some villagers dabbed at their eyes. My throat tightened. The chief continued, "Today, a new policy has arrived from the county. To honor martyrs' families, their descendants will receive priority quotas. This means," he paused, looking directly at me, "whoever marries Emily will be granted the right to move to the city. If she marries a villager, both of them will go as workers. If she marries an educated youth, both will be reassigned to the city with stable jobs." Gasps filled the air. Conversations erupted at once. "A city quota? That's life-changing. Whoever marries her is the luckiest man alive." I felt dozens of eyes on me, some warm with pride, others sharp with envy. My palms grew damp. From the side I heard Ryan's laugh, low, smug, full of certainty. He swaggered toward me, Sophie trailing reluctantly behind. "No wonder you've been acting so bold lately," he said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "You already knew about this policy, didn't you? Thought you could turn the tables on me with this little surprise." I turned to face him, my voice even. "You're right about one thing, it won't work." He smirked. "Finally admitting it, are you?" "Yes," I said, letting the words cut through the night air. "Because I don't love you. I'm not marrying you. Which means you're not getting the quota." The yard went silent. Even the cicadas seemed to stop. Ryan's smile faltered, his face going pale before flushing red. He stammered, "Don't be ridiculous. You trailed after me for years. Everyone knows you wanted me." I lifted my chin. Everyone was wrong. Gasps rose from the crowd. Whispers buzzed like bees. Ryan's jaw tightened. His pride, his greatest treasure, was slipping through his fingers. He stepped onto the very rock the chief had stood on moments before, raising his voice so all could hear. "Listen, everyone. Emily's been pursuing me for a long time. I didn't want to say anything before, but since we're all here, I'll announce it now." He turned toward me, his expression painted with false gentleness. "Emily, I like you. Marry me." Applause and cheers erupted from the educated youths. Some villagers clapped too, thinking it was the natural conclusion. After all, they had seen me follow Ryan like a shadow for years. But this time I didn't bow my head. I shook it instead. "I don't like you. I can't say yes." The cheers died instantly. Silence slammed over the yard. Every eye turned to me, disbelief etched on their faces. Ryan froze, humiliated, his hand still stretched toward me. His lips trembled as he tried to salvage his pride. Emily, don't test my patience. Don't pretend. You've been waiting for this all along. Stop acting coy. I took a deep breath and let the truth spill, each word clear and cutting. This isn't about love. This so-called confession isn't for me, it's for that quota. You want to use me just like before. But I won't let you. Not in this life. His face twisted with rage, his voice breaking as he yelled, even with the quota, you're still just a village girl. You should be thanking the heavens I even looked your way. That was when a tall figure stepped forward from the crowd. Daniel Brooks. He walked with quiet strength, his broad shoulders casting a long shadow under the lantern light. His voice, though calm, carried like a strike of thunder. Ryan, how dare you bully my fiancé while I was gone? Gasps rippled through the crowd again. Fiancé? Emily's engaged to Daniel? Since when? Ryan's face drained of color. What nonsense are you spouting? Daniel's gaze didn't waver. Emily and I are engaged. The chief was our witness. Our feelings are genuine, and our engagement happened before any policy was announced. He turned slightly, his eyes softening as they met mine. Isn't that right, Emily? My throat tightened. Slowly I reached for his hand. Our fingers laced together, firm and steady. Yes, I said, voice carrying through the yard. Daniel is my fiancé. The murmurs grew. Some villagers smiled, nodding approvingly. Others looked on with envy. Ryan looked like he'd been struck. Anger, disbelief, and humiliation all fought across his face. He laughed bitterly. Emily, you really know how to put on a show. Dragging Daniel here just to provoke me? Do you think I'll fall for this act? Chief Whitaker stepped forward then, puffing calmly on his pipe. Enough, Ryan. I was their witness. Their engagement happened before today's announcement. There's no trickery here. The chief's words were final. Unchallengeable. Ryan staggered back, his lips trembling. His friends shifted uneasily, whispering. Sophie stood off to the side, her expression frozen, her hand clutched tightly in her skirts. And then the laughter began. Not mine, never mine, but the villagers. Low at first, then rising like a tide. Ryan thought he had her in his pocket. Turns out he was nothing more than her shadow. Serves him right, looking down on us all. Their laughter stung sharper than any slap. Ryan's pride crumbled before my eyes, and for once I felt no guilt. Only relief. Because this time I hadn't bent. This time I hadn't let him break me. I had chosen differently. And the whole village had seen it. It was a quiet morning. The kind of morning where the breeze was gentle and the sound of chickens pecking at the dirt made the world feel deceptively calm. I was sweeping the yard when the peace shattered with the shrill voice of Mrs. Turner. Emily Carter, she shrieked, her fist pounding my door. Shameless girl. Open up. My heart sank. The crowd's murmurs reached me before I even opened the door. Neighbors were already gathering, their curious eyes sharp as knives. I pushed the door open, forcing my face into calmness. Mrs. Turner stood there, her gray hair wild, her face flushed with anger. In her hand she waved a woman's undergarment like it was a battle flag. You may be young, but you sure know how to disgrace your family's name, she spat. Using this to seduce my son? Do you have no shame? Gasps rippled through the crowd. My stomach clenched, memories of my past life flooding back. This exact scene, these exact accusations, the humiliation so heavy it had driven me to drink poison. But not this time. I folded my arms, keeping my voice steady. Mrs. Turner, what exactly are you accusing me of? She jabbed a finger at me. You've been sneaking around with Caleb. Don't think I don't know. My poor boy told me everything. You gave him this. She shook the undergarment again, and promised to marry him. Laughter and whispers broke out. Emily, of all people? With Caleb Turner? That simpleton. Didn't she already get engaged to Daniel? How many men does she want? I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms. In my last life, these whispers had shredded my dignity until I broke. But I wasn't that broken girl anymore. Where's your proof? I asked coldly, pointing at the garment. Besides whatever rag you're waving around. Mrs. Turner smirked. Proof? Caleb, come here. She shoved her son forward. Caleb shuffled into the yard, drool glistening on his chin. His mind was that of a child, though his body was a man's. Villagers pitied him, but they also believed him incapable of lying. "Tell them," Mrs. Turner urged. "Tell everyone what Emily did." Caleb grinned, eyes vacant. "Last night I was out catching grasshoppers. Sister Emily pulled me behind a tree and gave me this. She said she would marry me." The crowd erupted. She admitted it. Unbelievable. Disgracing her parents like this. My blood roared in my ears. Lies. All of it lies. Before I could speak, another voice cut in, firm and steady. "Enough." Daniel stepped into the yard. He must have run straight from the fields, because sweat plastered his hair to his forehead. But his eyes, sharp, unwavering, landed on me first, then turned toward Mrs. Turner. "You say Emily gave him that garment? Then let me ask Caleb a few questions." Mrs. Turner frowned but said nothing. Daniel crouched in front of Caleb, his tone gentle. "Caleb, when Sister Emily gave you this, what was she wearing?" Caleb blinked. "It was too dark. I couldn't see." Daniel nodded. "Then how did you know it was Emily?" "She told me," Caleb said, still smiling. "She said she was Sister Emily. But," he tilted his head, her voice was different. "Not like usual." The crowd stirred uneasily. Daniel's voice sharpened. "Different, you say? And was there anything else?" Caleb's smile widened. "She smelled nice. Really nice. So nice it made me want to sneeze." The yard exploded with murmurs. My heart thudded. Perfume. I had never owned a drop of perfume in my life. But I knew someone who had, Sophie Miller. I lifted my chin, eyes sweeping the crowd until I found her. She stood at the back, half hidden, clutching her handkerchief. When our eyes met, she flinched. "Funny," I said loudly. "There's no perfume in this village." "But Sophie, didn't you receive some from your relatives in the city? I recall you showing it off just last week." All eyes swung toward her. Sophie's face drained of color. She stepped back, whispering, I don't know what you're talking about." But the villagers were already closing in, suspicion blazing in their eyes. Mrs. Turner narrowed her gaze. "Sophie Miller, come here." Sophie bolted. But two strong women grabbed her arms and dragged her forward. She trembled as Caleb sniffed the air around her, and his face lit up. "That's it. That's the smell. But, you're not Sister Emily." The crowd erupted in shouts. "I knew it. Framing Emily all along. What a snake." Sophie's mask cracked. She burst into tears, clutching at Ryan, who had slipped into the crowd unnoticed until now. "Ryan, help me. Tell them the truth." Ryan's face hardened. "Sophie is just an accomplice," he said coldly. "Maybe she helped, but this wasn't her idea." Sophie's tears turned to fury. She shoved him away. "You liar. It was you. You told me to do it. You said Emily would never agree to marry Caleb, and once she was disgraced, you'd swoop in and rescue her. You promised." Gasps rippled through the villagers. All eyes turned to Ryan. His face darkened. "Don't believe her. She's making it up." Chief Whitaker, who had been watching silently, stepped forward, pipe smoke curling. "I may not have proof," he said, his voice heavy, "but I've seen enough. Ryan Hayes, your schemes are shameful. Sophie Miller, your hands aren't clean either." The chief's judgment was final. He couldn't punish them without evidence, but the damage was done. The villagers turned away from Ryan in disgust. The other educated youths, once his friends, muttered and stepped back. His pride, once so untouchable, was left in tatters. Mrs. Turner, meanwhile, turned on Sophie like a wolf. "You tried to ruin my son's name. If you won't take responsibility, I'll report you for indecency." Sophie paled, collapsing to her knees. "No, please." But Mrs. Turner was relentless. "Marry Caleb or face jail." The villagers murmured in agreement. Sophie's tears fell like rain, but she had no choice. Within the week, she was forced into marriage with Caleb Turner. As for Ryan, he stood alone, abandoned, his once proud shoulders hunched. Even Sophie, once his jewel, had been dragged into ruin because of him. I stood in the center of the yard, Daniel at my side, my hand tucked in his. For the first time, I didn't feel weak or cornered or broken. I felt victorious. This time I hadn't been crushed. This time I had fought back and won. The village has a way of remembering. Whispers linger in the air longer than smoke. And once your name is dragged through the mud, No river can wash it clean. After Sophie was forced into marriage with Caleb Turner, her tears became daily spectacle. Villagers who once envied her delicate city manners now shook their heads as she stumbled through chores, her hands blistered from the sickle, her silks replaced by patched skirts. I passed her once on the road and she glared at me with eyes full of hatred and despair. But she said nothing. He didn't need to. Her life was punishment enough. Ryan fared no better. The chief made sure every work assignment sent his way was the dirtiest, heaviest, and most thankless. Hauling manure. Digging ditches. Repairing fences in the sweltering sun. He who once strutted with clean nails and polished shoes now stank of sweat and dung. The educated youths who once orbited around him avoided him like a plague. "Don't get too close," I overheard one whisper. "The chief has eyes on him. He's finished." Ryan pretended not to care. He still walked with that forced swagger, still flicked his hair like a proud rooster. But pride couldn't hide his hollow eyes, or the tremor in his hands when no one was looking. Sometimes when I caught his gaze across the fields, it wasn't anger anymore. It was desperation. But I felt nothing. Only the kind of cool detachment you feel watching a storm pass in the distance. Meanwhile, my life was changing. Daniel and I worked side by side through the autumn harvest, our hands blistered but our laughter softening the exhaustion. One evening, as the sun set fire to the sky, he carried the last bundle of wheat on his back and turned to me with a shy grin. "Emily," he said, his voice low, "thank you for choosing me." I laughed softly. "You make it sound like I was doing you a favor." His gaze held mine, steady and warm. "You saved me," he said simply. "When no one else would even look my way, you did. I'll spend the rest of my life proving worthy of that." My chest ached, but in a sweet way. I had once begged for crumbs of affection from Ryan. But with Daniel I didn't need to beg. It was given freely. After the harvest, Chief Whitaker arranged our wedding. It was simple. A gathering in the village square with lanterns strung and tables piled with food everyone had contributed. The villagers clapped and cheered as Daniel and I bowed before the ancestral tablets, sealing our union. That night, as fireworks lit the sky, Daniel took my hand and whispered, "From now on, no matter what happens, we'll face it together." I believed him. Within weeks, the government processed the martyrs' quota. Daniel and I were given permission to return to the city. When the chief handed us the stamped papers, he said, "Emily, your uncle would be proud. Go. Build a life beyond these fields." Leaving the village was bittersweet. I glanced back one last time at the thatched roofs, the wheat fields swaying in the wind, the crooked fence outside my little wooden house. My old self had died here. My new self was born here too. Ryan stood in the distance, watching silently. His clothes were torn, his face smeared with dirt. For a fleeting second I wondered if he felt regret. But when he turned away, shoulders slumped, I knew he wasn't thinking of me, only of what he had lost. The city was another world. Factories roared, streets bustled with bicycles and chatter, and food stalls lined every corner. For the first time in my life I tasted dumplings stuffed with pork and cabbage until I was full, truly full. Daniel watched me eat with amusement, then quietly ordered another plate. His parents welcomed me with trembling hands and tearful eyes. Once disgraced professors, they had been reassigned to factory work after years of exile. But when the new policy reinstated their teaching positions, it was as if life had given them back their names. "Emily," his mother said, clutching my hands, "thank you for standing by our son. You've given this family hope again." I shook my head, overwhelmed. No, he gave me hope. Life was not easy, but it was purposeful. Daniel and I both worked at the textile factory, our quota guaranteeing us steady jobs. But we spent our nights bent over books, studying equations, sketches of rivers, blueprints of dams. "Hydraulic engineering," Daniel said, eyes shining. "If we can learn it, we can stop floods. We can prevent what happened to your parents from ever happening again." I touched the medal I carried in my pocket, the one the government had given me in my uncle's name. My throat tightened. "Yes," I whispered. "Let's do it. For them." Our diligence caught the factory's attention. A year later, we were both recommended to university. For two village-born workers, it was a miracle. When the acceptance letters arrived, Daniel twirled me around in the courtyard until I laughed breathlessly. "We did it, Emily. We really did it." In that moment, the past felt far away. The humiliation, the poison, the tears, They were shadows that no longer reached me. But sometimes news from the village trickled in. Sophie, they said, was wasting away. He hated Caleb, hated the chores, hated the stairs. She screamed at her mother-in-law daily, refused to work and yet demanded food. Caleb, simple as he was, tried to please her, but she shoved him away. Her once delicate hands grew rough, her face sallow. Ryan, they said, had become a ghost of himself. He still lived in the village, but no one trusted him. When names were submitted for military service or college recommendations, his was never even considered. He trudged through the mud each day, shoulders hunched, no trace of the pride that once made him shine. The villagers shook their heads. He had everything in his grasp, but he threw it away. I listened to these stories with a strange calm. Once they would have filled me with longing or rage. Now they were just echoes. As my life had moved on. One evening at university, Daniel and I stood by the library steps. The setting sun bathed the campus in gold. He handed me a notebook filled with sketches of dams, his handwriting neat and precise. "Emily," he said softly, "one day we'll build this. Together. And when we do, your parents' names will live forever in the strength of the river's walls." Tears blurred my eyes, but I smiled. "Then let's work until that day comes." And for the first time I realized, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. The train rattled into the small station with a whistle that echoed across the valley. As the brakes screeched, I leaned slightly out of the window, watching familiar hills roll past. 10 years. It had been 10 years since I'd left this village as a martyr's orphan, weighed down by gossip, betrayal, and humiliation. Now I was coming back, not as the girl who had begged for scraps of love, but as one of the lead engineers on a dam project that would change the future of the entire valley. Daniel stepped down first, his tall frame solid and steady as ever. He turned, offering me his hand with that quiet smile I had come to rely on over the years. I placed my hand in his and stepped onto the platform. The scent of earth and pine hit me instantly, pulling me back to childhood memories. "Feels smaller, doesn't it?" Daniel murmured. I smiled. "Or maybe we've just grown." Word traveled fast in villages. Before we'd even reached the main road, people were already pouring out of their houses. "Emily's back. And Daniel too." The engineers from the city, the leaders of the dam project. Children ran ahead, barefoot, their laughter ringing. Old women leaned on canes, smiling with pride as though my success somehow belonged to all of them. Men slapped Daniel on the back, calling him a son of the soil who had made it big. "Do you see?" Mrs. Whitaker, the chief's wife, announced to anyone who would listen. "This is what it means to honor your family's name. Emily Carter has made us proud." Her words washed over me like sunlight. Once this same village had whispered behind my back, calling me shameless, unworthy, pitiable. Now those whispers had turned into applause. Daniel squeezed my hand discreetly. His eyes softened, but he didn't need to say anything. I knew he was proud. It wasn't until late afternoon, when the crowd had thinned and Daniel and I were walking toward the project office, that I saw him. Ryan Hayes. He was standing outside the small grocery stall, slouched against the wall, his shirt wrinkled, his face unshaven. The man who had once carried himself like the center of the universe now looked like a shadow of himself. His hairline had receded, his eyes carried deep lines, and his jaw no longer carried the sharp confidence I remembered. Beside him stood Sophie. I almost didn't recognize her. She was thinner, her beauty dulled by bitterness. Gone was the girl who flaunted perfume and silks. She wore a faded blouse, her lips pursed as she berated him in front of everyone. "You're useless, Ryan. Can't even get a steady job. Look at Emily and Daniel. Do you see the difference?" Ryan's face flushed red. "Shut up, Sophie. You think you're any better? Couldn't even stay married to Caleb without scandal. You came crawling back to me because no one else wanted you." The villagers passing by shook their heads, some muttering, some laughing quietly. Once the two of them had strutted about, mocking others. Now they were little more than entertainment. Ryan must have felt my gaze because he looked up suddenly. Our eyes met. For a heartbeat, silence stretched. His lips parted as if he wanted to say something. His eyes flickered with something raw, regret, disbelief, yearning, I couldn't tell. Once, the sight of that gaze would have broken me, would have made me ache with the memory of love I thought I couldn't live without. Now I felt nothing. No pain, no longing, not even hatred. Just indifference. I turned my head slightly, the way you would glance past a stranger, and tightened my grip on Daniel's hand. Daniel, ever perceptive, understood without a word. His arm shifted subtly, shielding me as we walked past. Behind us, Sophie's shrill voice cut the air again. "Don't even think about looking at her, Ryan. You ruined her once and now she's out of your league forever." Her words stung with truth, but not for me, for him. That night, after the villagers hosted a welcome banquet, Daniel and I walked along the river where the dam construction had begun. Lanterns floated on the water, carrying prayers for safety and success. I gazed at the flowing current, remembering the night I had almost ended my life with poison. Remembering how Ryan had laughed with Sophie while I lay dying. Remembering how alone I had felt. But when I turned, Daniel was there, just as he had always been, steady, patient, my anchor. "Does it bother you?" he asked quietly. "What?" "Seeing him again." I let out a soft laugh. "Not at all. Once he was everything I thought I wanted. Now, he's just another villager. I feel nothing." Daniel studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Good. Because I don't want his shadow to touch what we've built." I leaned into him, resting my head against his shoulder. "Can't. We're too far beyond him now." In the following weeks, as construction meetings and inspections kept us busy, Ryan became a quiet presence at the edges of the village. He never approached directly, but I could feel his eyes on me whenever I passed. Once during a site meeting, I caught him standing at the edge of the crowd, arms crossed, watching as I explained floodgate mechanics to the workers. His eyes burned, not with love but with jealousy. The villagers' respect for me, the pride in their faces, the way Daniel and I stood side by side, it all seemed to eat away at him. Later, I overheard two farmers whispering, "Ryan's gone mad with envy. He says Emily should have been his." Ha! As if she'd ever want him now. "He threw away his chance and she's a star while he's nothing." The words must have reached his ears too, because the next time I saw him, his fists were clenched, his jaw tight, his whole body trembling with restrained rage. But he never said a word to me. Not one. The strangest part was not his decline, not Sophie's bitterness, not the constant bickering that turned them into a village joke. The strangest part was how utterly detached I felt. Once I would have wept to see Ryan reduced like this. I would have wanted to fix him, to save him, to believe in him. But the girl who loved Ryan Hayes had died long ago, buried with the poison that once stole my breath. What remained was a woman who had rebuilt her life from ashes, who had found real love, and who no longer needed validation from anyone who tried to break her. As I stood on the riverbank one evening, watching the dam walls rise higher with each passing day, I realized my story had come full circle. I had returned to the place of my greatest pain, but now it no longer had power over me. Ryan's downfall wasn't my triumph. My triumph was simply that I had outgrown him. And in that quiet realization, I felt freer than ever before. The rains came early that year. For weeks, heavy clouds hung over the valley, pressing down like a weight, the river swelling with each passing day. Our dam project stood tall against the current, but it was still unfinished, and every drop of rain added pressure we couldn't ignore. Daniel and I worked day and night, coordinating shifts, checking the integrity of the supports, ensuring that no mistake would undo years of planning. But someone else had other plans. It started small. A frayed rope here. A broken pulley there. At first, the villagers thought it was chance. Tools wear out, accidents happen. But when entire planks disappeared overnight, and when one morning we found the curing concrete chipped deliberately, it became clear. Someone was sabotaging the dam. Daniel's jaw tightened as we surveyed the damage. "This isn't carelessness," he muttered. "It's deliberate." I knew instantly who it was. My gut told me before evidence confirmed it. Ryan. He had grown quieter since our return, but not calmer. His eyes followed me everywhere, burning with jealousy. Once he had mocked Daniel as worthless. Now Daniel stood beside me as a leader, admired by the villagers, while Ryan scrounged for scraps of dignity. I should have expected he'd strike at the only thing that symbolized my triumph, the dam. But what I didn't anticipate was Sophie. Late one evening, as the workers packed up and left, Sophie lingered near the scaffolding. I watched from a distance, suspicion prickling. Daniel caught my arm. "Don't get too close. Let's see what she does." Sure enough, she crouched low, loosening the bolts on a key support beam. The metal screeched softly as it gave way. Then Ryan emerged from the shadows, whispering harshly. Hurry up, Sophie. If this wall goes down, the whole valley will blame Emily. She'll fall from her pedestal and I'll finally be the one they respect again. Sophie's voice was sharp, filled with contempt. Respect? Ryan, you can't even feed yourself. You think bringing down Emily will make them admire you? They'll spit on you harder. I'm only here because you promised me money, and you don't even have that. Their argument carried through the night air, sharp as broken glass. I stepped forward then, lantern in hand. So this is what it's come to, I said coldly. You'd endanger hundreds of lives just to soothe your pride. Ryan flinched, caught, but Sophie's eyes narrowed. She jabbed a finger at him. Don't look at me. This was his idea. He dragged me into it. Cowardice, I realized, was all they had left. When the villagers arrived, summoned by Daniel's whistle, Ryan tried to protest. She lies. It was Sophie, she did this, not me. Sophie laughed bitterly. Oh, don't pretend. You've been ranting for weeks about how Emily should have been yours. You said you'd ruin her if it was the last thing you did. The villagers gasped. Whispers turned quickly into shouts. Faces twisted with anger. They had entrusted us with their safety, their homes, their children's futures. Sabotage was unforgivable. Ryan lunged at Sophie, his hands gripping her shoulders. Shut up. You'll ruin me. But Sophie's rage had long been simmering. With a sudden movement, she pulled a small fruit knife from her pocket, the kind every villager carried. Her screams split the night as she drove it into Ryan's chest. Gasps echoed. Someone cried out. Ryan staggered back, eyes wide, hands pressed to the spreading stain of blood. He collapsed to his knees, looking up at me. His voice was hoarse, weak, but desperate. Emily, if I treated you better, would you have married me? The world seemed to still around me. 10 years ago those words would have shattered me. I would have clung to them, twisted them into hope, begged for them to be true. But now. I stepped closer, my voice steady, my gaze unflinching. I'd rather drink poison. A ripple went through the crowd, shock, then silence. Ryan's eyes widened, a hollow sound escaping his throat. And then, with bitterness still etched across his face, he fell forward and did not rise again. Sophie dropped the knife, her hands trembling. She laughed suddenly, the sound high and broken. It's his fault, all his fault, he ruined me, ruined everything. Her words dissolved into screams as the villagers restrained her. Someone fetched the authorities, and by dawn Sophie was gone, dragged away in hysterics, her mind splintered beyond repair. Ryan was buried quietly, without honor, without love. Few attended, and those who did shook their heads, muttering about wasted youth and poisoned pride. As for Sophie, her name became a curse, a warning told to children. Beauty and arrogance without virtue lead only to ruin. Life, however, does not stop for grief, or for vengeance. In the weeks that followed, Daniel and I threw ourselves into the project. The villagers, furious at Ryan and Sophie's treachery, rallied behind us with renewed determination. They worked longer hours, double-checked every beam, every stone, every measure. At last the day came when the dam was complete. We stood together before the massive wall of stone and steel, the water pressing against it but held firm, tamed at last. Channels branched off to irrigate fields. Plans were already underway to connect electricity lines. For the first time in generations, the valley would not fear the floods that had once taken so many lives, including my parents. When the final gate was sealed, the villagers erupted into cheers. Children danced, elders wept, and Daniel wrapped an arm around my shoulders, his smile bright and proud. A month later, a small ceremony was held by the dam. At its base stood a marble plaque carved with names, my mother and father's among them. In honor of those who gave their lives to protect this land, it read. I traced the letters with trembling fingers, my throat thick with emotion. For so long I had carried their memory like a wound. Now at last it felt like a seed that had blossomed into something enduring. Daniel squeezed my hand. They'd be proud of you, Emily. Tears welled in my eyes, but I smiled. Of us. They'd be proud of us. On the morning after the monument was unveiled, Daniel and I climbed to the top of the dam at sunrise. The river below shimmered, calm and controlled, the first rays of light spilling across the valley like gold. I breathed deeply, the cool air filling my lungs, washing away the last shadows of my past. Daniel took my hand, his grip warm and steady. This is just the beginning, he said softly. I turned to him, heart full. Yes. A future built on love, dignity, and resilience. We stood together as the sun rose higher, hand in hand, watching the river that had once symbolized destruction now stand as a monument of strength. And for the first time I felt truly free. Free of Ryan, free of betrayal, free of the girl I used to be. I was Emily Foster now, wife, engineer, daughter of martyrs, builder of futures. And I had everything I ever needed. The end.